Over the past week, we've seen one of the most devastating wildfires in Maui's history, in Hawaii's history, engulf the west part of the island of Hawaii in flames, destroy homes, displace over 4,500 people, kill over, I think the last count I saw was over 60 people. It is devastating. It is something that we hate to see. And this wildfire has been linked to climate change. And what I want to do today is I want to talk to you about why and how climate change is linked to this wildfire and why we're seeing devastation like this, not only in Hawaii, but in other places around the world this year, and what we're going to see in the future. We're going to talk about in this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. This is the podcast where you find out what's happening in the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And today is not a good day to talk about climate change, to talk about wildfires, to talk about the devastation that many people have seen in Maui, in Hawaii, one of the islands in Hawaii. It's been really difficult to watch a lot of the videos that are coming out, over this past weekend, and seeing, the people who were waiting 5 hours in the ocean as they're watching their city burn in Lahaina. And these are people's livelihoods. These are you see the homes, you see their businesses, you see the environment, the beautiful environment of Maui, where many people go to visit every year, but the history, the culture. There was a banyan tree that was burnt. It's still standing, but definitely affected by the fires. That is a very, very popular tree. It is so heart-wrenching to watch this type of thing happen to such a beautiful place, and to see this happen around the world this year. We've seen wildfires across Canada, in the US, around the world. We're seeing it now in Hawaii, where you would never think that this could happen, and unfortunately it's happened because of climate change. It is something that climate change is, rearing its nasty head in many places around the world. And we are seeing the direct consequences now. We are seeing it. It seems like every month we are seeing something different, something extreme. This wildfire that happened in Maui over the past week was the largest in Hawaiian history. Probably one of the worst natural disasters since the 1960 tsunami that hit the island of Maui and killed over 60 people. It's worse than that. It is. I just can't even imagine. When you hear about wildfires in Canada, there are places. Canada's such a big country, and I live in Canada, so that's why I'm using this as an example. You feel like, oh, there's places to go. I know it. It's for the people who the homes were burnt down. There's not a lot of places to go, but it's such a big country. You feel like, oh, we have places to go. A lot of people got affected with smoke and everything like that. But the places that got destroyed, you worry about, how do they recoup? How much money does it cost to recoup? Does insurance pay for this type of thing? Does if there's a business, or how do they get paid after that? How do they just pick up their lives and continue to go and do things? It's not an easy thing to get over, and just even to imagine. It's this very scary thing, and for the people who went through it this past weekend, where you're on an island, and although there were places to go, apparently the east part of the island did not get the effect of the wildfires. You still saw a lot of people going into the ocean because there was no more room to go. It was all engulfed in fire. And even some of the videos you see in the ocean, like, things were igniting on fire. They were on fire in the ocean. It's a very scary thing. The smoke inhalation, you worry about long-term effects for these people and their health. It's devastating. That's really the word to use to describe this. It's absolutely devastating. And there are places to donate. And I hope that you can find the right place to donate. I'm going to look up, there've been definitely posts and resources to say here's where you should donate, and this is a place where you can donate for sure. I'm going to look those up, and I'm going to put it in the show notes. If you have the ability and you're willing to donate, please do consider it, and I'll put it in the show notes. I get zero of the money. I have zero attachment to these organizations, but I want to make sure that you have the right links to those organizations. Today I want to focus on what caused this. Climate change has been linked, but there are a few other things that have caused this that we often ignore when it comes to environmental management from a public perspective, and there's a lot that goes into it. Wildfires happen. They happen in Canada. They happen in the U.S. Apparently, they even happen in Hawaii, just not to this level. So, what happened to make this such a devastating wildfire? Why did it become so big so fast? So what I did is I went on, I kind of Googled it. I found some resources on Axios.com, and it talked about, the destruction and what caused it. So there's a link to climate. I'll put the links to the show notes. It's the climate link to Hawaii's wildfire tragedy, and it's been updating quite a bit. This was updated on August 10th last time we talked, but the most recent update that I've seen, where right before I recorded, it was updated I'm recording this on the 13th, so it was updated not too long before I hopped on this website, and so. The link, what happened was it's been really interesting to see, what's causing it. So researchers do say that climate change has likely been a contributing factor to the deadly wildfires in Hawaii. They're not saying it was initiated by it, definitely had to do with the spread. So they're saying why it matters. They're saying a summer of blistering, record-breaking heat has also seen wildfire scorching in Canada for us, which I've mentioned, with smoke drifting south and blanketing the skies of cities in the Northeast, including places in the U.S. Increased wildfire risk is a common symptom of human-caused climate change because everything is so dry. The dry conditions in certain parts of the island of Maui have amplified the wildfire risk, observers have said. And they're saying what they're saying is, as always with wildfires, there are multiple interacting causes, and climate is only a thumb on the scale, said Stanford University climate researcher Marshall Burke, as he told Axios via email. Here's the big picture. At this point, there's been over 60, and maybe that's increasing, have been killed by the blaze. But here are the notes that happens. Burke's notes that the south and west of Maui was exceptionally dry, which meant that fuels were more flammable than normal. So fuels like dried vegetation were more flammable because they were drier. And it says here, as with most droughts, climate is not the only cause, but an amplifier, typically via hot temperatures. Climate change likely contributed to the drought, and the drought contributed to making extreme wildfire activity more likely. So there could have been a wildfire anyway, but it wouldn't have spread so quickly, right? Experts attribute the surge of wildfires to the prevalence of non-native grasses, which are especially common in Maui and are more flammable than the indigenous plants. And this is where the extra sort of management style of invasive species like non-native grasses can really play a role here in looking at the spread of wildfires. It says this, coupled with extreme weather patterns connected to climate change, unusually hot and dry summers, and shifts in rainfall patterns, all contributed to the wildfire. Now, one thing to notice that it says here, in terms of what was burnt, 2,170 acres were burned on Maui. Extreme winds from Hurricane Dora and drought conditions across Hawaii exacerbated the spread of wildfires. So neither Maui nor the Hawaiian Emergency Management Agency, HIEMA is what they call it, activated warning sirens for residences. The HIEMA spokesperson Dan Rapkoch confirmed to Axios. The agency said it did activate official alerts via phone, radio, and televisions, and the country's opt-in resident alert system. However, widespread outages could have limited the impact of the alerts alerts reach to residences. So essentially, when you have, your cell towers are down because they've been burnt, or there's a power outage, it's very difficult to get updates for TVs and radios and even cell phones. Oftentimes those go quickly, but if they're not out quick enough and the power's out or your cell tower's out, and this fire is spreading quite rapidly, you may not get access. Many residents, they said, didn't know there was a fire until they physically saw the fire coming. And so that makes it extremely dangerous. We know from the past that alert systems play a very big role and are a very important tool in making sure that residences and people around the islands and other places are known or know about what's happening, and they can evacuate if that's necessary. Especially like if there's we've seen the tools for communication, especially with a tsunami warning, when there's sirens and alarms and updates to your phone and messages to your phone where you're saying, hey, there's been an earthquake in the ocean detected close by, and there's a potential of a tsunami. Please take cover, or please get to higher ground, or whatever they say, just to make people aware of it. So the widespread outages could have limited people in the impact of those alerts. It says the speed of the wildfire made communication between frontline responders and emergency management nearly impossible. That's a big problem as well. When these fires are, we've all seen the videos of people going through fires and driving through the wildfires. It's so fast, so hot. It's very dangerous that communication can get broken down between residences and, of course, frontline responders and emergency management. That's awful. They said in terms of destruction, the destruction in Lahaina, I think it's called. Sorry. The destruction in Lahaina was so bad, it does appear that a bomb went off, and it will take time to know the full extent of the damage. Senator Brian Schatz, the senator for Hawaii, said in a post from Lahaina, that the 150-year-old banyan tree is one of the largest in the U.S., was smoldering at the base but still standing. Venture said that there's another person, that's doing this. One of the officials said that things are falling every minute around us, and there have been some people hurt by the falling telephone poles. All the damage, everything that's happened here is absolutely devastating. It's a couple of things that we know. There are certain things that we can control, and there are certain things that we can't control. Something's going to have to be done in the future to ensure that the spread of wildfires is contained. I don't know what research has been done, but in this case, it has to do with invasive species, invasive grasses that can be more flammable than the non-native grasses. You have to remember that the islands of Hawaii and fire and lava and things like that are entrenched in the culture. We've seen the island's not, it's not a rookie in dealing with fire. They've had wildfires before. They've had volcanic eruptions before, but there hasn't been as much sort of globalization impact on them. There hasn't been as much like invasive species coming in to make wildfires spread quickly. Tourism coming through, a lot of development, over the last, 50, 60 years. And so to have people, these types of extreme weather events and extreme natural disasters happen, we must look in the future to how to adapt to this to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Obviously, on the communication standpoint, maybe there's other ways of communicating that need to be done, where if a power outage goes out, people can still communicate. Why did the sirens not go on? That's something that should be investigated. How are these non-invasive or how are these non-native grass species coming in? How to get rid of them to ensure that a wildfire doesn't spread as quickly. There are certain things that we don't have control over. The winds, the hurricanes, and tropical storms. Those are very difficult to control. You can't control them. What you can control is the management and the amount of money you put in from a proactive standpoint to adapt to these types of natural disasters. Now, obviously, I'm speaking in the future, and we've just gone over this problem, but it's sometimes it's the lack of urgency in certain matters and a lack of focus in certain matters that may or may not have been predictable of what would spread these wildfires around. And once the damages are assessed and hopefully fixed and people can start rebuilding their lives, the government has an opportunity and a necessity to put in these changes, to investigate these changes, and to implement changes that will help in the future. This is absolutely devastating. This is something that nobody wants to cover as someone who covers science communication and ocean conservation. When people's lives are uprooted or burnt, in this case, when people die in these natural disasters that you'd hope at one point could have been prevented. This is something that we have to look to from a government perspective to ensure that they are following protocols, they are following what's necessary. And for us as people to know, hey, what can spread a wildfire quickly in certain areas? What can we do as a government, as a people, as a community to ensure that those things that make a natural disaster worse are gone, if they can be gone, if they can be removed, or there's a program for that. This is where supporting organizations that work with governments on various different programs, whether they work in collaboration with governments or they're funded by governments to ensure that certain programs for the environment are looked after. There are certain programs within government where government funds organizations to make assessments or create, bodies, committees within certain regions to be able to, look at biodiversity in the area, look at invasive species in the area. Those programs, those nonprofit organizations, those non-governmental organizations that are funded by government, this is where you can actually put in, support for them and maybe put in money or understand what they do, maybe volunteer with those said organizations if there's opportunities to do so. This is where voting counts. This is where you look at your government representative at a regional, state, and national level, or state or provincial and national level, to say, hey, what are you doing to ensure that if natural disasters do occur, we minimize that as much as possible? How do we minimize that? Where's the research on that? What are you looking towards? And don't just say, I don't believe in climate change. Do something that will actually protect the people. Oftentimes, we get caught up in a lot of side issues that may not have, they're extremely important, but may not have relevance to the personal safety of, places where people live. That's important. That should be non-negotiable on whatever side of the aisle or whatever political party you belong to. Government representatives should be looking at this, securing the safety of their people that they have been elected to represent. And to be able to manage programs or deal with programs or understand the science behind the programs that will ensure safety, that will cut down a natural disaster that can get out of hand, just like this one here. These are the things that we need to know in the future. These are the calls to action where if you're going to vote, or hopefully you will vote if you have the chance to vote, then vote for people who are actually going to do that. Talk to them about it if they don't bring it up. A lot of the times we get in politics, we get dominated by various issues that are sort of the national issues or the campaign issues that that these political candidates are running on. However, they might not be the issues that really matter in the long run. They might be issues that are just popular at the time. Climate change is going to be one of those issues, and they should be an issue in every single election. The environment should be an issue in every single election. But challenge your candidates, your potential candidates, to say, where do you lie on decreasing, wildfire risk? Or where do you lie? Like what ideas do you have on making things better that secure things as the environment is changing? Even if you don't mention climate change, as the environment changes, how do you secure safety for its citizens, and making sure that people are alerted, making sure that people that the wildfires are reduced or anything else is all reduced. It's something that needs to be done on every election, no matter what type of election, whether it's national, state, or provincial, or regional or local. These are things that need to be asked, and it's up to us as citizens to ask that in our respective countries, in our respective provinces or states, and our respective local areas. That's what we need to start addressing. Enough of this, we see it all the time, corruption and believability and all this kind of stuff. Let's talk about the issues. Like, obviously that's important, but let's talk about the issues of safety. Let's talk about issues of safety in a changing environment and how our governments plan on doing things. I'll be honest, one of the things that I've been very, very nervous about is, like, at the beginning of this year, I said, living in Ontario, we're pretty good. Like, from a natural disaster standpoint, we haven't had it too bad compared to other places around the world. And then what happens is we get smoke from wildfires. We get wildfires in the northern Ontario, northern Quebec, things like that. We're getting affected down here. We're seeing a lot more rain. Some places that are getting flooded. We're seeing tornadoes, many more tornado warnings. This stuff is starting to accumulate everywhere. Nobody's excluded from this. It's everybody's included, and it's something that we don't want to be included in. So that's just something to consider. I want to provide a resource for you to be able to understand and have talking points on how to speak to people about the Maui fires and what can be done in the future, hopefully to prevent it. And that's it for today's episode. If you have any questions or comments or concerns about this episode, please feel free to contact me at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. And I'd be happy to have that conversation with you. And that's it for today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.